Welcome to Creative Piecemeal Podcast, a podcast for creatives. I'm your host, Tammy Takeishi. Join me for compelling conversations with artists, actors, authors, musicians, and other creatives about the impact of the creative and fine arts in their lives and our ever-changing world. Thank you for listening. Hello and welcome to Creative Piecemeal Podcast. I am so excited to have Ginny Luke here. She is a classically trained violinist and a fabulous electric violinist. And she has a debut solo album out November 1st called Devil at My Heels. And she has a stunning musical pedigree, fiercely resonating vocals, and brave, timely lyrics exploring personal liberation and empowerment. A small-town girl from Iowa with a pianist mom and a conductor dad, Ginny Luke began music lessons as a preschooler and practiced violin and piano up to 8 hours a day throughout her youth. By age 14, she was a concerto soloist and made her Carnegie Hall debut just 2 years later. Since then, of course, she's done a variety of wonderful things, which we will touch on in the interview, and has culminated to an album release, Devil at My Heels. So that's where I'd love to get started, is in the present and work our way backwards. So what inspired your album?
I think what inspired my album, and you'll get this as a violinist, and also just want to say thank you for having me on, Tammy. Appreciate it. As a violinist, we know growing up, there's a lot of rules. There's a lot of education. There's a lot of etiquette, manners, history that goes along with the classical violin. And I feel like the main driver of this album is strength and power. And a lot of that came full force through my discovery and liberation and finding my identity through my early and mid 20s. And that's what this album represents, is empowerment and badassery.
Fantastic. And I was blessed to get an early copy of the album. And oh my goodness, your vocals are equally as amazing as your violin playing. And like the songs are just like, it's been my jam lately, rocking out on my commute. If I could just name some of my personal favorites, I really, really love Save Me and Woman I Wanted to Be. And I think mostly because it just helps, like it relates to some things I've been through not too long ago in my own personal life. But I'm just curious, you mentioned empowerment. I would love to know a little bit more about what those songs mean to you.
Sure. Woman I Wanted to Be, as you heard, starts with kind of a Kurt Cobain guitar tone, kind of, vulnerable vocal, deep in contemplation and darkness. And it reflects on the goals of who you're trying to construct yourself to be as a person, as a woman, as a musician. And through some of the hardest experiences that I faced in my life and in the music industry, I wrote that song in a place of not feeling like I was the woman I wanted to be, or even had the potential any longer to become the woman I wanted to be. Now, through making the record, I'm excited to say I found a lot of strength in the last few years of new sides of myself. But that's exactly why I wrote it, was to process that and help other people feel understood. At the time, I didn't think I was writing it for someone. I just wrote it in the middle of the night. But I hope it can help someone, because a lot of artists have helped me figure out who I am and how to process and find my identity through their songs. So you can hear the violin solo in that song is very fiery, passionate. So the song progresses from quiet depression to kind of a rage towards the end. And then after goes into a violin cello interlude that is very passionate and frustrated and rageful and expressive. And I'm very proud of that song, because I think there's a lot of different musical elements that convey the emotion accurately. And that's, I think, my favorite song on the album, because it's so truthful. And then Save Me, I love. It's also extremely honest. It's very catchy with the guitar rhythm part. And the chorus is very simple, but it's about a frustrated relationship that offers love, but also a toxic aspect that isn't healthy to stay in. And I know a lot of us have probably experienced this in love and lust. So it's about feeling stuck in that place and wanting to repair, wanting to heal it, but it's just not getting healed and it just continues to be toxic.
Like I said, I absolutely love the female empowerment that you bring, not only to just who you are, finding yourself in your career, and not being afraid to just explore that musically. And again, I love this. I'm so excited for you and your debut album, and I just love everything that it's about. But I am very curious about your creative process. Is there any song on here that you had challenges in terms of writing? And conversely, is there any song on here that just flowed out and it was like a breeze to write?
The hardest songs to write were Leading Lady and Yeah, Yeah, Yeah. And I think sometimes what's really fun about writing powerful, sexy songs is you get to tap into an alter ego in a certain mood. And sometimes you just have to figure out, how do I convey this without it sounding over the top or too cheese, too cringe? Like, let me make sure this is cool. Would I find this cool? Would I find this sexy? Would I turn this on Spotify to get ready? So some of the lyrics were harder to write, but the feeling and the spirit of Leading Lady was really clear to me, what I wanted to write about. And similarly with Yeah, 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 this was a little bit different, but same. I didn't want to have any lines that were like cringe, but I wanted to be honest because I'm from Iowa originally and people like to party hard there. And that song is like totally about like just going all out. Drinks are flowing till we drown. Church and party, I'm devout. Like, you know, so I wanted to make sure that spirit was like captured. And I was kind of in the production process told, we want to make sure it's not too girly. We want to make sure it's not too Kesha. And I was like, okay, first of all, it's not going to become too Kesha. And second of all, I like Kesha and I did vocals for her tour. And we can take a spirit and put it into Ginny Luke's vibe. So I just had to kind of like take some of the youthful feminine qualities out of Yeah, Yeah, Yeah and make it like more intense. And I think it ended up being cool because now it's even more relatable for more people.
I love that you mentioned doing background vocals for a really well known artist. How did starting doing background work, how did that inspire you to become where you are today?
I did backgrounds for artists starting at age 19 for Meatloaf. Previously, I was in a girl group at age 14 through 18, and I did musicals and opera before that. But with background specifically, Meatloaf, and then an iteration of the Gap Band, and then Kesha and other artists, recently AJR on their Maybe Man arena tour. I learned so much from those artists. I pull in lessons and tips and tricks, techniques I see them doing. I progress as a vocalist. I become a better artist because I'm around so many artists. It's like I get hired to be in their world and, fulfill their vision. And I learn from that and I help facilitate their vision. And then I get to go back to my own vision and message and go, okay, well, how do I want to sing? What vocal tone do I want to use? Do I want to add rasp? Do I want to have open resonance and a wide vibrato or clean straight tone? Do I want to sing really high register stuff? Do I want to do a lot of runs or do I want to keep it simple? So I get to, I think, go to work and, make money working for artists and then evaluate what kind of artist do I want to be. So that's been a huge blessing, I think, in my career is to learn from my job.
That's great. And I love that. I'm that kind of person too, like never stop learning, always wanting to learn from peers, learn from people ahead of me in my career because it's a way to get better and then you can give back to the community in some way. Other people learn from you.
Totally.
What is one of your proudest moments so far in your career, not including your debut album release?
I think Carnegie Hall at 16 was one of my proudest, and 14 playing with Cedar Falls Waterloo Symphony Orchestra. But I think in the commercial setting, I'm trying to think if it would be a session or an awards show or a gig. I always come back to this, but I'll say it. The Meatloaf Sydney DVD filming, the tour, the Guilty Pleasure tour filming. I was young enough to not even really realize how impactful and big it was, but also aware that it was the biggest crowd and one of the funnest, coolest things I would ever do. But it was almost like I was like young and dumb, but good at my skill. And now I look back at that and I look back at that tour and the tour footage, and I'm really proud of that. I'm proud of how I prepared. After I recorded his album, I got the call like 2 or 3 weeks later to go on tour and learn like 30 songs plus 13 albums of material to be well versed with Meatloaf's discography and to play violin and keys and sing and be prepared. And I just am very proud of my younger self for rising to the occasion and then also enjoying it. That's the key that is easier when you're young. And as you move through life, it's like, let's just take in these moments.
That is wonderful. And you must have an amazing memory to like learn all that and memorize. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic.
I think it's that classical training.
Right? Speaking of classical training, I am so curious, who are some of your favorite composers? And is there a classical piece that you have not yet played that you'd like to?
Ooh, great question. My favorite composers are Tchaikovsky, Ravel, Sarasate, Debussy, and a piece that I have not yet played. I've not yet performed Claire de Lune. I studied it in college on piano, but then I had to go on tour, so I didn't really get to dive deep. And there's a violin concerto. Oh, Sibelius violin concerto. I haven't played yet, and I would really like to sometime.
Oh, that's a beautiful one. I mean, like, there's so many beautiful ones. Just in general for our instrument. We are really lucky, right?
Yeah, we have great repertoire.
We do. We do. And I sense a theme, Ravel, Debussy, Tchaikovsky. Love it. Love it.
I love romance. I love passion in any style.
Of course. Of course. It makes sense. And I can see that, or hear that rather, through your album.
Cool.
So, again, getting back to your debut, do you have exciting plans to celebrate the day that it comes out?
Yeah, I just confirmed a release show and listening party in Los Angeles. It's at a private studio. It's going to be invite only, but we're going to film it. And I'm going to be performing some of the songs off the record, and then we'll announce other show dates, but we'll be doing Vegas and New York as well. But on the day it's released, I'm so happy I'll get to be with friends, family, and my label people.
Oh, that's wonderful. Are you a dessert person? Like, are you hoping to have a certain kind of dessert at your party?
Yeah, I am a dessert person. I think maybe like a red velvet situation, like cakes or cupcakes or champagne, got a toast.
Nice. Excellent. So, speaking of Los Angeles, this has absolutely nothing to do with music. But what is one of your favorite restaurants to visit in your city?
One of my favorite restaurants in LA is Yamashiro. It's in Hollywood and it overlooks all of Hollywood and West Hollywood, downtown LA. You can see so far. It's up above on the hills, and it's a Japanese restaurant. It's gorgeous. And they have the different sections, like a beautiful bar, the beautiful restaurant with like a Zen garden. And then they have this cool after party spot that's like a club and has like hookah and dancing.
Cool. That sounds really beautiful. Like it'd be quite an experience. If we snuck a peek at your music collection when you were in high school, what are some albums that we would find?
Okay. I think it would range from Carrie Hilson to Renee Fleming to Allison Irahita. I don't know if you remember her. She was a rock chick with pink hair. To Pink. Also, I loved Adam Lambert, and I got two callbacks to be in his band. It didn't happen. But I loved Adam Lambert's releases back then. I still love Adam Lambert. But who else? Trey Songz. I discovered Yngwie Malmsteen, the virtuoso guitar player in high school. So I listened to a lot of his electric guitar. And I still liked Blink 182 and Green Day and all those bands through high school.
Excellent. I love that you have such a varied selection. Do you feel that any of those artists from your younger years sort of seeped its way subconsciously into your music?
Oh, for sure. Oh, yeah. A big one. This is funny. Evanescence and Alicia Keys were huge influences. And they definitely seeped into my sound and my social circle and my mentors, because I ended up getting to know Ben Moody very well, who was the guitar player in Evanescence early on. We spent about a year and a half hanging out, recording in his studio every day. And then my mentor, Henri Gill, was Alicia Keys' music director for 12 years. And I had, studied his work since I was like 9. So yes, very much. I think the music that you listen to in your upbringing fully affects the musician you are later in life.
And shout outs to Evanescence. Yes, I love them as well. They were huge on rotation when I was a younger person.
Yeah. And they're still touring.
I know, it's amazing. And I love that Amy Lee's range. I mean, like, she even put out like a lullaby album. I was like, whoa, dude, that's awesome. You know?
Incredible. Yeah, she's so badass. I hope to work with her someday.
I feel like that could totally be in your cards. You guys have like a similar vibe, you know?
I hope so. It's so cool.
We'll put that out into the universe. How's your life in the creative arts been different than you imagined it would be when you were a kid?
My life in the arts is different than what I imagined it would be, mostly in the small amount of glamour compared to what it looked like as a child in Iowa on TV. I think it's mostly hard work, and it's mostly insane perseverance and late nights, early mornings. I think as a child, I already didn't get that much sleep. So I just figured that would be the same. I just already knew as a kid, but that is the case. Some people find that shocking as a working musician or as an artist. Like my boyfriend is working on Paris Hilton's show right now, and she has a new song that goes, "I'm so tired." So I always joke with him. It's true. I mean, you're just working all the time, but it's a blessing because your life is full of these like wonderful and transcendent and connected moments. So I guess that's on a last note of that question is I wondered if being in entertainment would still be full of artistic moments. And my career very much is, my life is very much full of those moments.
Wonderful. And I'm so glad that you brought that point up because it's important to find the moments that really spark the passion and help people remember why they got started. And it's, when you're pulling really long days or you're on tour or, that people are going through, sometimes it's hard to be like, why did I get into this? And so you have to sort of think about that sometimes. And it's good to find those moments.
Totally. And when there aren't enough in a week or a month, got to be aware and make sure we get some more.
That sort of slides into the topic of self-care. Do you do anything to, especially if you're touring or something, to keep yourself grounded so that you can continue to be that level of artistry that you strive and do?
Oh, wow. That's a really great question. I discovered on this last AJR tour how important yoga, any kind of yoga, was for me. And that tour lasted from March until early August with like one break in between. So it was long. And I needed to figure out how to sustain my energy and my happiness and spiritual grounding, like just maintaining sense of spirit, sense of self. So yoga really helped. More sleep helped. I got more sleep on that tour than I do in normal life. I got 8 to 9 to 10 hours most nights. So I think that's a good one. And being outside does make a lot of difference. And then for me, going to art museums is a way of self-care. I think art museums help me play if I don't have like a space as an adult to like dream and play and be creative, because being on the road, you're like, confined to your bus and then your dressing room and stage. And you can, if you have time or like the space, but maybe you don't have the mental bandwidth, then I like art museums a lot, or like vintage stores to just kind of let your mind run free.
Excellent. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And, if you ever come to New York to visit, we have lots of those art museums and vintage stores.
Yeah, I love that about New York so much.
So, one final question. In your own words, what does living a creative life mean to you?
Living a creative life to me means exploring different sides of yourself frequently, allowing yourself to evolve, allowing yourself to be a part of different experiences, physically, spiritually, everything, and always have constant wonder, not let the mind get consumed with daily tasks and capitalism and base existence, but really find joy and find wonder on a daily basis.
Excellent. Excellent. That's one of my favorite questions to ask guests, and I love the variety and the wisdom that comes out of that.
That's so good. I'm definitely not doing that these last 3 days of emails. Like, but it's just a good reminder, like, to all of us.
Excellent. Well, Jenny, thank you so much for being on the show. Listeners, check the show notes and snap up her new album, Devil at My Heels. It comes out on November 1st, but I believe the pre sales are out now, right?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tammy. This was so fun and interesting to chat with you. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. Listeners, again, check the show notes, give her a listen, give her a shout out. She's an excellent vocalist, excellent violinist, and I'm so excited for her debut album and to see where she goes from there. And as always, thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Like the show? Have a question? Stop by the Facebook and Instagram pages. Links are in the show notes, or search for Creative Piecemeal Podcast on social media and click follow for all the latest.